Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Victory Lane? Yeah, it's even better with Chumba by my side. Race to ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
If you work in university maintenance, Grainger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Grainger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more. And all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, visit Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Season 7 of Sun Coaches Podcast is proudly brought to you by Titan Sensor. Season 7. That was my number in high school, so maybe this will be lucky for us. We'll see. You know, I've learned over time that when somebody's talking about something you really don't want to talk about, you just can always throw in there, hey, I knew this guy once, and then just pretty much make up whatever you want to, and they won't listen to it. They'll get off track, and you don't have to talk about the uncomfortable thing anymore. Coach, like we do every week, tell everybody where you grew up and where you're from. Sun Coaches Podcast, where not everybody has a funny story, but everybody has a story. Hope you enjoy Season 7 of Sun Coaches Podcast. Sun Coaches is proud to partner with Titan Sensor for Season 6 and 7. Titan is made in the USA, proudly founded and based in Texas. When you connect with Titan, you are not alone. You can collaborate and share templates with other coaches across the country to build reports and foster competition. Used by programs such as State 6A Georgia State champion Grayson High School, Titan can tailor a package to fit your needs. The eye in the sky never lies. Improve your team's performance. Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, Season 7, and tonight I'm excited to be joined by the athletic director at Oconee County High School, Coach Curt Miller. Thanks for being on with me.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Well, Coach, are you the son of a basketball coach?
I am. I am the proud son of Chuck Miller.
That's what DT told me. He thought that might be, when I told him we were going to talk, he said, that's got to be Coach Miller's son, because David Thrower's brother coached basketball for years in the Hogansville area and outside of LaGrange, and he was at East Coweta at one time as well, and he knew he talked about your dad, and he's like, he's got to be his son. It's got to be.
Yeah, he, if I'm not mistaken, I think he started off at Woodbury and then went to Milner and then went to Monticello, then to Cartersville, and then to Henry County. So
you got to move all over when you were a kid?
Well, luckily, I was when he was in Cartersville, I was born, and then in '81 we moved to Henry County. So I never moved as far as once I got into school. We stayed in Henry County, so I was lucky.
So what all did you play when you were in high school?
Man, I played some football growing up in middle school and youth ball and basketball, obviously. And then when you got to high school, I just transitioned straight into basketball. And lucky enough, man, I wasn't very fast, couldn't jump a lot, but I could shoot it from behind the arc just a few times a game. And I went to Reinhardt and played for 2 years. And then after that, I just transitioned to Georgia Southern and that's really where my coaching started. I took the community coaching classes and coached with John Page at Southeast Bullock. And we had a good run that year, and then came back to Henry County and started coaching at Henry Middle.
So what was your first year coaching at Henry Middle?
My first year was 01-02. I'll never forget 9/11. It was that morning I was going to get my CDL. It was my last day to test. And we had just pulled out of the bus barn, and they told all the buses to come back. And, obviously a tragic day in the history of the United States and the world. But yeah, that was my first year, 01-02.
So did you know when you went off to college that you were going to teach and coach, or did you want to do something else or follow in your dad's footsteps?
Yeah, I knew early on. I don't think my mom liked it very much, but when you're a gym rat, back in the day, Georgia high school didn't have any rules against coaches' kids doing warm-ups with the team or sitting on the bench. And man, my dad's players as I was growing up they treated me so great. And, I just wanted to be a basketball coach. And my idols, other than Jeff Shepard that played at McIntosh, were all they were all high school basketball coaches and football coaches. I wanted to be one so bad, and I just always looked up to those guys and got to coach against a few of them, when I first started coaching. So that was pretty fun.
So when you started at Henry Middle, what all were your responsibilities as a young coach?
Hey man, just like everybody else, I was coaching 7th grade football. I was 8th grade basketball coach. Track team was joint 7th and 8th grade. One of those coaches. You had to get your CDL, and I was teaching a computer class, had a PE degree, and then I think the January of my second year they moved me into PE, and so yeah, I mean, coming out of college, I think it's just like everybody else. You got to do 3 sports and drive a bus.
And they had to see if you were going to stick before they put you
That's
in
right.
PE.
That's right.
Try to run you off. I remember what that was like, coaching 3 sports and couldn't. Which at that age you didn't care. You couldn't tell you anything anyway.
You're not making a ton of money, and you've got all those newspapers you get that have all these DVDs to they're going to make you the best coach ever. So I'm trying to save up to ask my wife or my now wife to marry me. And do I buy these DVDs? I want to go play golf, and I'm trying to save money. So there's all kinds of stuff going
on. Yeah. Got to make some life choices along the way and figure out. It's not much different than when we were broken in college.
That's right. And, and at that time too, my wife was still at Georgia Southern. She ended up getting her MBA. So she was down there for 2 more years. And, I was making weekend trips there, or she was coming up. But to coach at the middle school level and not have those weekend and Friday night commitments was actually perfect for us, because I was able to go down after a Thursday football or basketball game, or she was able to come up. So it was actually a perfect time to really learn how to be a teacher, learn how to learn the true ropes of education and coaching. And I was very fortunate to be under Bruce Towson and Hugh Barbie and Troy Baker over there at Henry Middle. They took me in, and they were my coaches too. So that was pretty cool.
So how long were you there?
I was there for 3 years. And then, Henry was growing really, really fast. And Luella High School opened my second year at Henry Middle. And then after my third year, Dutchtown opened. And I was very fortunate to get hired there as the head boys basketball coach and assistant football coach.
So how was that? Starting your own varsity program and first head coaching job? Because if you coach one of the big 3, I mean, you may deal with not as many kids, but you have at least as many headaches.
Yeah, it was opening up a new school is number one, it was super fun. But the challenges of the punch list not being done, all the keys in the gym not matching, or the locker rooms don't match, and the concession stands the wrong format of all the other keys. So the master to the gym doesn't work. And, we had portable goals, which I despise, but they put the backboard on too tight and it busted 2 days before basketball practice started.
Oh, no.
So those type things, I think anybody that's moved into a school, they understand all of that, but you're ordering uniforms, and that's exciting because you're ordering the very first uniform in the whole school. And you want to be like, I'm not a Duke fan, I'm a North Carolina fan, but I do admire how Duke has kind of had the same uniform style throughout all these years. You're trying to think about that kind of stuff, and you're letting your kids, even though the 9th and 10th graders, have a say in some things. And so I really enjoyed it. It was, when you're 9th and 10th graders and you get thrown into a full region, football and basketball, it's tough. But, we had some pretty big wins for those young kids. And year 2, we built on top of that. And in year 3, I think we're 12-4, maybe going into Christmas break. And, it was a fun time at Dutchtown.
So who was the football coach while you were there?
Mike Creasman was at Stockbridge when I was growing up. Him and Kim Braswell that played at University of Georgia. Kim was the head football coach at Henry County. My dad was the athletic director and girls and boys basketball coach. And then Mike was the AD at Stockbridge, and Mark Andrews was the basketball coach over at Stockbridge.
So y'all were all basically like family.
Yeah, well, kind of. We still didn't like each other. Like, we respected
more like cousins,
each other.
Play cousins.
That's right. That's right. But, they'd go over to, I remember Dad and AC McCullers and Steve Hell, who used to be at McIntosh, and Tony Watkins used to be at Woodward. Man, they'd meet over at whatever gym, and me and little Tony would get in whoever's gym it was, and we'd shoot basketball for 5 hours. And that's that's kind of how Tony Watkins, who's at Holy Innocents, and I became friends, because Mom and Dad ran the basketball camp, Chuck Miller's Atlanta Superstar Camp at Woodward. And so that was all my summers. I just did basketball all summer long.
So you grow up the son of a coaching legend in the state of Georgia, and you start your own career, and you get off at Dutchtown. And how long were you at Dutchtown?
I was there 3 years, and then again, my second year of a new school, Ola High School opened, and so Rodney Knox took that job as the boys basketball coach and AD, and then after my year 3, after year 1, Ola, he ended up leaving, so the Ola job came open, and I'd always wanted to be an athletic director again. My dad was one forever, and so the AD boys basketball job came open, and Ross Iddings took a chance on me, and so I took that job, and I was there as the AD basketball coach for 7 years, and that last year, the 8th year, I was just the AD. I realized it was time to. I was really getting focused on just being athletic administrator, and our county athletic director job was about to come open, and I knew that was something I was really interested in.
So you fired yourself.
I did fire myself. It was the best decision I ever made. And my wife would agree with that.
Yeah, it's always nice when you can fire yourself.
Golly, man, in 07, 07, our oldest, who's now a freshman at West Georgia, in 09, our second was born, and those were the times I'm coaching basketball. I'm in the middle of all this, and I'm like, what am I doing? And I remember Olivia kind of being skittish when I came home. Actually, both of them were. And then it took them about a month, and I just wanted to be a dad, and I still want to be involved in athletics, but I did not want to lose those early years. I just didn't. And it was a great decision. I mean, I still miss it. I watch our basketball teams at Oconee play all the time, and man, I see things going on, and the next thing you know, I'm up there pacing on the walkway. But I'm proud of them, but I wouldn't change the stopping coaching when I did for anything in the world.
So when you took over full athletic director responsibilities, how much did you have to lean on your dad and some of the other guys, that you grew up around to help you out? Because it's a lot more involved than being a head coach, because you got to think about bigger budgets and the whole sports program, and dealing with everybody in the whole community instead of just the people that support your niche, activity. How much did you have to, whose brains did you pick the most about athletic director, or did you just kind of ease into it over time?
Well, one thing, since I knew that I was always wanting to be an athletic director, those were conversations that Dad and I were having, ongoing. And, he would also relate coaching, being a head basketball coach and trying to make a decision for the varsity versus the JV. And then how did the girls teams fit into this? And he would always make that connection to, well, whatever you do for the boys, you need to make sure the girls are doing it, because that could be a Title IX issue. And he would walk me through that. And he would always make connections. And going back to the people that were my idols growing up, Mark Andrews, who we lost a few years ago, ended up being a really good friend of mine, but I would talk to him constantly, about being AD, and, I'll reach over you go over to Coweta County, and Evan Horton, who's the superintendent, and Steve Allen, who's the high school principal at East Coweta. Those were guys I met early on, when I joined the GADA, I think my first conference. So I was the AD 07, 08. So in 08, I went to my first conference, and I met so many people, just John Kelly, who was at Sprayberry at the time, which is a really funny story. The second year of that conference, I took my wife with me, and she said, "Is that John Kelly?" And he had coached her at Sprayberry in high school. So it was pretty cool. And then, we're friends to this day. And, I think for young ADs and young coaches, the best thing you can do is to go to those clinics, go to those conferences or whatever, and just build your network and get phone numbers and just call people and ask questions. I really do. I think that's just a really big thing young coaches need to try to do.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, one of the kids asked me the other day in class, because I'm the old guy now, and I coach offensive line, and I co-teach special ed, and so I'm in math class all day because I'm a math person. And so anyway, kid looks at me, and he doesn't play anything. He's just John Q. Public, regular guy. but we get, I mean, he's my guy. And he looked at me and goes, "What do you do?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "I mean, what do you do? How do you, like, what's your thing?" And I said, "I know people." And he just looked at me and he thought I was being smart. And I was like, "No, man, I'm being honest."
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. The rush of racing? Nothing beats it. But Chumba Casino comes close. Chumba's got fast spins, fun games, daily bonuses, and all the action you can handle. Now that's a ride. Ready to hit the throttle? Get in the driver's seat and head to ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Honest, I really think my only marketable skill is I know a lot of people, and it was because an older coach took me to a clinic when I first got started, Coach Bobby McAllister, and just said, "Hey, get out there and listen and meet people, and I'm going to introduce you to folks," and that's great advice. I think you're offering there about building your network, because regardless of what anybody wants to believe, they can call it the good old boy network, the frat boys, the whatever they want to call it. It's about who you know.
That's right. It is. And and just for whatever, if it's all teaching, if it's all coaching and education, just to have people around the state that, it might be a job you're going to take. You can call them and ask them, "Hey man, tell me some information about this school or this area or whatever it is." And I just think that, the one thing you can't do in education is burn bridges, because you never know when that person is going to be at the central office or whatever. You need to, if you leave a school, you need to make sure you're leaving on really good terms, and then build your network. I mean, I just can't say that enough. People that leave schools on bad, I don't really understand that, because in education, there's always a chance you're going to end up working for those people again. And I just think it's very important just to keep all connections in good standing, and, make as many connections as you can.
Absolutely. So you take over as the AD. How long were you there before you transitioned to your next position?
So I was at Ola for 8 years, 7 as a basketball coach. And then I took a year, the district had a health and physical education teacher on special assignment position. And I took a chance, hoping that was going to give me an opportunity to get the county AD job when it came open the following year. And luckily it did. I was able to work with the sitting AD at the time, Vicki Davis, who was assistant principal when I was in high school. And she was a former SEC official, really knew athletics, did a tremendous job. We went through a Title IX, ended up being a settlement with the government, but we added lacrosse, gymnastics, and swimming for females. And we had to do surveys at all the schools. And so that was pretty cool to work through, or help her work through. But she was a really good mentor for me, and still is. And then I ended up following her, and I was there, I think it was 5 years doing that job.
So what was the biggest difference, other than scope and scale, of making the transition from being a building athletic director to being the countywide athletic director, especially for a county the size of Henry County with the amount of schools, and what all did that entail?
Yeah, it's different. You're not really directly dealing with coaches at this point when you make that move. Now you're working through your athletic directors, working with your principals, just to make sure board policy, you're working through transportation, working through any athletic trainer contracts you have, and you're really working through that. One of the things that I was able to do, Gwinnett at one point had a aspiring athletic administrator cohort, and John Weir and I think Brian DeBerry were leading that. And so we were able to implement. My superintendent was very supportive of it. So we implemented that in Henry, and my last few years there, I think we had 10 sessions that went throughout the year. And then my last year, it got to the point to where they had to select an AD at a school that had gone through the program. And, Mo Freeman came and talked. I had Charmin White, who's now at Pace. I picked a lot of coaches that would come and speak to the ADs. And then I had some ADs come. Dexter Wood, obviously everybody's heard Dexter Wood, and what a legend at Buford. But, I tried to bring in as many other voices that were going to say a similar message to me, but in a much better way, just so they could get the point and understand, whatever the topics were for that class session. So that was pretty fun. And, we're able to host gymnastics. We had some gymnastics, one of our sports, and we had a gym that ended up opening up when they built McDonough High School. The old Henry County gym where I played came open, and so we moved gymnastics over there, and we were able to do some pretty cool things, with our 10 high schools and 11 middle schools at the time, and it was really fun. It was fun working there because I spent 19 years professionally there, and then obviously I spent all K-12 in Henry. So Henry County always, hold a special place for me.
I think that's awesome that they have that opportunity for people that want to go down that road and go into being an athletic director. I've got my master's in athletic administration and my specialist is in kinesiology, but I've never had any formal training. I've never been an athletic director either, and it's probably the only administrative job that I would be interested in doing, because I definitely don't want to be an assistant principal or building principal or anything like that. But that's pretty cool. Being in South Georgia most of my career, I didn't even know such thing existed until you just said that, and that's, to me, that's just a phenomenal idea to groom and manage and get people involved that want to take that next step. So I imagine you're pretty deep and involved in the GADA.
I was, and to get back onto the athletic administration, we had one coach that came through that, and she was, I really pegged her to be the next new AD, and she came to me after about the fourth session. She goes, Doc, I've realized that this isn't me. I want to stay coaching. And what a better way for her to learn that through that cohort versus getting the job and realize halfway through the school year she doesn't want to do that job. So that was, she saw what it was all about, and she was able to make that decision while she was still coaching so she could keep coaching, and she didn't get pulled out of the classroom or anything like that and, mess the roster up at the school on, what they've got to do now the following year. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if you go through the cohort, you get a taste of what, you might think you want to be an athletic director. Just like, I talk about jobs a lot, and I'm like, some of you younger guys, you think you want to be a head coach, but you don't really understand everything. The coaching of the sport is not the problem. That's the easy part. It's all of the extras you have to, think about. And I don't try, I'm not trying to scare anybody off. And a lot of times we laugh and say that first year is like drinking water through a fire hose. And, because you just get overwhelmed. And I imagine being athletic director is kind of the same thing.
Yeah. But I will tell you, being a head coach at the high school level helps make that transition so much easier because you've been through it. And you've had some of those tough conversations, even though you're targeting those conversations from a different angle as an AD, you still had them. So,
yeah, I've been a head football coach and a head baseball coach for a while, and you're exactly right. It's a whole lot easier, I would think, because you have the experience and the background of you've had to deal with some situations,
right?
As opposed to just coming in cold and not having any experience. And in my opinion, I think that's probably the best way to develop and find a good athletic director, somebody that's coached multiple sports, been a higher level coach, whether it's assistant head coach or head coach in multiple sports, because they have a little bit better, view and idea of how an entire athletic program works.
Right. I think you asked me about GADA before I went backwards on you back about the cohort, but yeah, I joined the GADA in 07, 08, and man, I never missed a conference, and it's such a good organization, especially for ADs, and now the depth at which they offer all the courses and the workshops, and the connection to the NIAAA, which is the national organization. And I swear by it. I think it's a great organization for ADs to, number one, to network, and then number two, to take those classes. I'll never forget taking that 501, 502 class and walking out of there thinking to myself, what in the world have I gotten myself into? And, you go to dinner that night and you're talking to some other ADs and you get some ideas of how they handle those issues. And next thing you know, man, I got this. Like, I can do this. And are we all still going to make mistakes? Absolutely. This is year 25 for me. I make them all the time. But, you're just trying to learn from them and move on and get better every day.
And that's all you can do, and experience is the best teacher. There's a lot of situations that we've all had that we probably didn't handle the best we could have, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So you learn
That's right.
and move on and go, yeah, maybe next time I'll handle that a little bit differently. And you're still dealing with people. I mean, it's a people business,
Right.
And at the end of the day, in my opinion, what you're trying to do is what's best for young people. And as long as you keep young people first and the student athlete first, to me, that's the most important thing. Nothing burns me up more than the glory hounds and the guys that walk around pumping their chest and I did this and I lost this game. No, your kids, they did all the great stuff. It was your fault they lost, but if they won, it was them, and it was a team effort, and it was what they did. But I'm real big on making sure that the kid's the most important thing, because ultimately they're our product, they're our raw material, and mama and daddy are sending us the best they got.
That's right.
So after being the countywide AD at Henry County, is that when you transitioned up to Oconee?
It is. COVID hit, and there was a opening at Oconee County High School, and we always lived in Jackson while we were in Henry, and so my wife was working, and she was a regional project manager for the state, and in her region, we were kind of living outside of her region in Butts County, but her region was Newton, and then up towards Athens, Hart County, Stevens, and all that. And, Kevin Yancey, who I barely knew Kevin, Dr. Yancey now. He ended up having the current job that I have when the one and only Ben Wiggins left Oconee and went to Thomasville as the superintendent. That principal job came open, and Kevin was fortunate enough to get it. And then, he took a chance on me, and I love working for Kevin. He's just a former athletic person, but he had a really good mind for the entire school and a great vision, and had a good run with him. And now, going on year 2 with Matt Stevens, just a clean transition. Matt played baseball and some other sports here at Oconee. He went to school here. He's a Life Oconee guy, and he was principal at our middle school, and he transitioned up as our principal. So yeah, this is year 6 here. We had our oldest daughter's a freshman at West Georgia. She came through, and she started off as a softball player. She's 6 foot. She's a good size first baseman, and then she found volleyball, and when she got a hold of that, she didn't turn it loose, and she ended up getting a scholarship to West Georgia. We're really proud of her. And our youngest is man, she's kind of excelled in everything she's done, and from basketball to soccer to cheerleading to volleyball, and now she's into flag football, and she had 2 big interceptions the other night. We were playing Grayson and JV, and now she's got brought up to the varsity. So not really excited about the cold temps, but that kind of sums up us here at Oconee.
That's awesome. A good daddy moment. And, the little brother, little sister and it seems to always end up being a little bit better sometimes. We might not want to admit that if we're the older sibling, but you drag them around enough and make them get out in the yard and play with you, they tend to be pretty sporty themselves.
Yeah, we're just proud of her for, not being afraid to try new sports and knowing that she's got some athleticism, and she's gonna try golf too. We've been swinging the golf club, and I think I put some stuff on Twitter, but for her 3rd time ever swinging the club, if you go back, you're just gonna be like, goodness gracious.
That's what I'm talking about. We live on the golf course down here in Hawkinsville, and my son's on the golf team. Now, he's not very good, but he loves it, and he enjoys playing, and it's something he and I can do together.
And that's all that matters.
And that's all that matters. He's going into his senior year, and if he works his tail off this off season, he might be the 4. He might be the 3 or the 4, but he doesn't really care. He just likes being a part of the team, and he's on the spectrum. So we tried everything, and I was like, well, golf, it's repeating the same motion over and over again, he'll probably be all over this. And the problem is he has a severe Freon addiction. So if it's hot outside, he's not gonna get out there on his own. I have to drag him out there and get him to go. And plus with my schedule, it's hard sometimes. But it's just awesome when you can watch your kids play. And I went to new school this year, and I got to thinking, and I told him up front, I said, look, my son's a senior. He's not coming with me because he wants to graduate with the kids he went to school with.
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Victory Lane? Yeah, it's even better with Chumba by my side. Race to ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
And I don't want to do anything in the spring because it's his life. This is it. And it means the world to him for me to be there and watch him play. And
for sure.
And if he's in a Putin contest, I'm gonna be there to smell it. I mean, that's just the way I am. I mean, he's the only one I got, and I'm gonna watch him play. And if he shoots a 70 on 9 holes, then he's gonna shoot a 70. If he shoots a 40, great. I'm not. It doesn't matter to me the one way or the other. And I tell him all the time, just do your best, act right, and be a good teammate. That's all I expect you to do. And he does that. But I want to let everybody know. And I forgot to tell you at the beginning, hang on at the end after I do the outro because I want to talk to you off air a little bit. Thank you for being on. But Coach Miller reached out to me via DM with the FTE came out last week in the state of Georgia. And it's always a contentious subject with coaches. And we all, I've got the series now. We're on Tuesdays. Me and Georgia Fired Football Coaches Association Executive Director Coach Ed Gaff could get on and carry on, and it's satire and whatever. And we do that. And the job season for football is starting to crank up. And Coach reached out to me and said, hey, I wouldn't mind, talking reclass with you. And I thought, man, that's awesome because to get the perspective of an athletic director when it comes to reclass and for us to step back and really honestly assess the fact that it is a monumental task where you're not going to satisfy anybody, and it's just hard. I really was excited and am excited to have you come on and share with us your dealings with, FTE, reclassification from your unique perspective.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you accepting and I think the more that we can, get out and talk about reclass from the GHSA side of it and get the more factual information out, the better. I think that first and foremost, Georgia is a very unique state when it comes to large schools, small schools. I just with the way we have large schools on the outskirts of the state border versus smaller schools that surround them. When you're talking about, that Lowndes and Camden region in 7A, you come to Metro Atlanta and you got all of the large schools surrounded by a bunch of small schools. And then just outside of that, you've got a bunch of small schools. And you've got private schools, you've got city schools, you've got schools that have IB programs, you've got schools that take out of district kids, you've got schools that don't. And so to try to find a one shoe fits all, that's not going to happen. So you've got to work through different philosophies, formulas, processes to see what would be the best. And I know people get tired of it changing every 2 years, but it's almost like we're trying to get to where we want to get. With this reclass, the power rankings, when I say this reclass, the current cycle we are in year 2, we were excited about the power rankings. But the one thing I will say is that when we did this power rankings, I don't think the state of Georgia 2 years ago was ready for straight 1 through 32. We had to try it out in a modified way. Now, what we're doing, we tried it. I think everybody would agree it's not the best. However, I think us doing it the way we did it has now told us the only way to do it is 1 through 32. With the slight modification of if you're a 1 or a 2 seed, you're going to get the slide at least to 16 to at least host one home game. And I think that's a win for those region champions, that they at least get to host one game. But the one thing we found out in our current cycle is that guaranteeing all region champions a chance to host 2, when that region championship could fall in the 25th spot, are are they really a one seed in a power rank, formula bracket? And so I think the reclass committee and hearing people come to all of our meetings, everybody agreed to that 1 through 32 was going to be the best way to do it. Now, the elephant in the room for everybody is, well, what in the world do regions play now? Why do we have regions if we're going to power rank? And, and I will say this again, the state as a whole was not ready to do 1 through 32 power rankings and to do away with regions. Now, I am getting my mind wrapped around what does it look like in 2 years, because honestly, we don't need regions anymore. We could have pods. Or Eli Connell came up with a situation. I think he got the big 60, the small 60. But what if we're playing in pods to where you got schools in A through 7A in those pods, and you're like in 3A, you have to get 50% of your games or 40% of your games in your own classification. And then you could branch out and get games in other classifications. It's going to save travel. You're getting power ranked, so you don't have to play everybody in your classification. But when it comes down to it, you're still classified in a classification for the state playoffs. So there's always ways to make it better. But, with regions, with power ranking, some regions are going to be stronger than others. But I think that's what Don did a really good job of this time, was looking at geography, but at the same time looking at balancing the number of teams in regions so teams can go get non-region games if they feel they need to strengthen their schedule. And, those are things that we look at, as far as the reclass thing goes, and with the appeals and all that, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense to me. I remember 24 years ago, I took a head coaching job in North Carolina, and they would put 72 teams in, and during the season, you could play whoever you wanted to. Now, when it came time for playoffs, that's when they broke you up into your classifications, and you amassed points. And I mean, it's kind of the same situation there. And I couldn't agree more, because, like right now, I'm at Dodge County, and we're in PSR for Division I and Single A. And so we have the power rankings. We come out number 18. We go to Rabun County. Cool. What we don't like, I mean, not us at Dodge, we could really care less about what everybody else does. But speaking for coaches I've talked to, is you got Dublin playing Waco in the first round. They're in the same region. You got Elbert playing Oglethorpe, and they're in the same region. There should be a way that we could say, let's just kick them over to another, put them in the same, as close as we can get it. And I don't think anybody would fuss with it. I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. What their ultimate number was, if you knew that you didn't have to turn right around and play somebody you just played 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we discussed that. And I'll be honest with you, this last football season, our region in the top left quadrant, and that's going to end up being your toughest quadrant in the current format that we're doing right now. But our region in football, our football team played great on the last game of the regular season. And we beat Jefferson, and then obviously go to Westside Macon. Well, we end up squaring off against Jefferson in round 2. Well, Monroe area, who's also in our region, squares off against Cherokee Bluff in round 2. And so, 2 of our teams in our region we were eliminated, in round 2. And I think that's just something that comes along with the power ranking. I will say this, I wish there was a way to make sure you didn't square off against somebody in the region in your first round. But as soon as the formula comes out and the power rankings come out, and teams see where they are, and then you make an adjustment because of a region opponent, it is going to hit the fan.
Oh yeah, well I was talking to Coach Holmes, and he made a good point, because we have such a large region.
Right.
Well, 7 teams from our region made it, and then he played Jeff Davis for his scrimmage game. They're in.
Yeah.
So you've played a quarter of the field already. So the odds of you having to play them again pretty quickly are pretty high. It's a math problem. Yes. And I think one of the other things coaches are concerned about that they don't really G-haul with is they're taking into account head to head. And again, I'm old, and I'm old school. It don't bother me if we go top 4 go, 1 versus 4, I don't care if you ain't the 4, too doggone bad. We can even go back to when I was a kid where you had a North Georgia champion, South Georgia champion. They met, they played, they go. Because there's no, that wouldn't bother me either. There's no magic wand or perfect formula, as you said. You're not going to be able to please, you're not even going to be able to please half the people. So, I mean, you might as well just figure out what's the best for. And the other thing that people have to take into consideration too, and I'm sure this comes up, is it's not just football. You got to look at the totality of athletic programs across the state and do what's best for everybody. And a lot of times people get in those meetings and they're, what's good for me is not good for thee. And they make decisions based on that instead of being able, and it is hard to be able to step back and think about, everybody else.
That's right. And I'll say this, we are the reclass committee. We were, by the time we hopped on this podcast, if everybody doesn't know, this is Monday after the classification appeals, just walking in the door. It was a super long day. It was very productive, but I spoke with Todd Holcomb a good bit last week, and the reclass committee is going to look at, they've got a different version of the rankings they do that don't take in consideration of any previous years or anything like that. And they think the rigor is more of that Georgia High School Football Daily article they had last week. If you read that, it's more along the lines of that. And so we're going to take a look at it. The one thing that we want, the state office wants, everybody on reclass wants, is we want to make sure we've got the best formula that we can have for the state. We're not hung up on PSR. We're not hung up on this thing coming from Todd Holcomb and the Maxi ratings and stuff. We just want what's best. And so we're going to dive into that, and we've got some time, not much time, but we've got some time to still look at it. I think that one does take a little bit more of head to head to get back to your first point into consideration. But we just want to make sure we've got the best available rating system. And I don't think PSR is off very, very much. But if there's something out there that's better and people say it's better, we owe the state the right to look at it and examine it and see if it is better.
Well, I love the idea about pause, because you start running into, we saw as a matter of fact, right before you and I got on, our coaching staff was sending out the new regions, and, we went from a ginormous region to now we're in a 5-team region, 6-team region. So football is going to have to come up with, 5 non-region games. Well, if you go pods, and you're not going to be penalized for, you're going to be judged by people in your classification when it comes playoff times, it should theoretically be easier to schedule games, because a lot of the local teams around certain areas, they're not going to play, people ain't going to be beating down the door to get some Toombs County. I can just go ahead and tell you that. That's not going to be a thing in rural Middle and South Georgia, or Worth County, or Thomasville. Some of the traditional, they're going to have to travel to go find games, because nobody's going to want to take that whooping. It's just not. Yeah, it's not feasible.
But I will say this though, with power rankings, it is to your benefit to maybe take one of those if you're a team that might be on the fence, because you're going to benefit in your power ranking by playing them.
Right, you're going to benefit if you can play one of them, but if you can only schedule 5 of them, because the smaller schools won't pay you. If you can't find a homecoming game,
right?
Because I was a head baseball coach in Single A when we had the power rankings 4 or 5 years ago, and my athletic director point blank told me, he said, "Man, you better schedule you some wins." Yeah, and because this playing these big schools, thinking that old school mentality of your teeth don't get strong eating oatmeal, you're gonna be sitting at home because you don't have enough points. And I was like, no, it'll be all right. And we ended up being okay. But, that's my biggest concern is it's a little bit harder for, rural and middle and South Georgia schools to find those games. And there is no solution. I mean, I don't know what, there is no solution. I'm just, saying what you hear and stuff like that. But you're right. I mean, I think y'all have done a yeoman's job with it, a great job. You're not going to satisfy everybody, and it's just not, and it's going to evolve. I mean, it's not like it's set in stone. This is the way it's always going to be.
Yeah, and again, I just like I said, I don't want people to take what I said about the pods as that's what we're doing. That's just my brain just starting to go ahead and look around this power ranking thing and how can we make that better and not lock teams into a schedule as in a region schedule if it could be.
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. The rush of racing? Nothing beats it, but Chumba Casino comes close. Chumba's got fast spins, fun games, daily bonuses, and all the action you can handle. Now that's a ride. Ready to hit the throttle? Get in the driver's seat and head to ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
A detriment to their playoff seed, if that makes sense. And that way you're just giving everybody an opportunity to say, hey man, all right, you can play anybody in here. You're not locked into a region.
Right. Yeah. So I thought that 10 or 15 years ago, I drew out mapped off the state because our state's so big.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to drive 4 hours for a first round game, which is absurd, but it is what it is. That's what we said we're going to do. But how much better would it be if you just had the go from Augusta to Dublin to Macon to down to the Okefenokee Swamp, and that's a pod. All right, you can play if it's football, find you 10 games in that area, and then we'll figure out, playoffs afterwards. As far as school size, I think it's a great idea. I know you're not. We don't want people to think that's what's going to happen, but it's almost like having areas in wrestling.
That's right, and there's kinks to it. I mean, there's still football teams and basketball teams and baseball teams in our state that have a hard time finding games. So what is going to be the mandate in those pods if that's where we go? What's going to be the mandate to make sure those schools have games? And that's that's the hard part of that. But we got time to work on that if that's something that people have an appetite for. I'm just trying to build on some of the momentum we're doing with the power rankings and how can we make this system better. And and with the diversity of all of our schools, like I mentioned earlier, with the schools that take students out of district, the private schools, the city schools, the IB schools, and all of that. What is the best way to address all that with travel? And I think the pod system ultimately eliminates travel concerns because it doesn't matter what classification you're in. If they're close, play them.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And I'm all for that. I think that is a fantastic idea. And, it just, it's too much like right. It makes too much sense. And we've always joked around, I know y'all don't like hearing it, but we've always joked around saying, does the GHSA own a map? When you guys come out with reclassification and some of the schools that get locked in and in certain places. And the problem is like you said, Coach Curt did a really good job with on these regions. I think personally, after I looked at them, I mean, there's a couple of people they'll probably have issue, but you have to take in, school size and the geography, because that Tuesday night basketball game or that Tuesday night softball game and baseball game, it's got to be taken into consideration. It's not just about a Friday night football game.
Yeah. And again, in our current model with our current bylaws, if somebody wants to play up, they can play up. If they want to play down, they have to appeal to the committee to play down. And then once all that's made, Don can only do what Don can do. He can't move Oconee County High School to West Georgia if that's the region they want to be in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He can't do that. So he's got to connect the dots the best he can on Google Maps. And sometimes it doesn't make sense to people because we're trying to balance regions at the same time, use geography. And I touched on that earlier, but it's not a fun process. I mean, I enjoy it because it's my X's and O's now that I don't coach. But again, as the committee, we don't see that part, the regions, until we're done and they've done that work. We don't have, the reclass committee doesn't have anything to do with placing schools in regions. That's the state office. And that was something that when I did take over, that was something we made sure. I talked to Dr. Fetch, who's the president of the GHSA, and he agreed. And so that's something that we did automatically, because the last thing we wanted people thinking is we're doing backdoor deals and all that stuff going on, because that's just not how it goes.
Yeah, it's not the reality of the coaching rumor mill, and I heard this, and they said this, and no, that's not how it works. Now, what I would like you to explain to everyone is something that's always I've tried to explain it to people because I'm a math person, and I found out that the gross majority of people are not. Explain to people how we get 7 classifications. What do you guys do with the FTE numbers to set the numbers as far as this is single A, this is double A, and so forth and so on?
Right. Well, I think the first thing that threw everybody for a loop was we do away with 7 classes, and all of a sudden they see us coming back with 7 classes. And but what we actually did was, I think everybody in the state of Georgia, when they heard D1, D2, they had no idea what we were talking about. And so all we did was we got rid of Division 1 and Division 2, and we turned it into single A through 7A. So now we have the same amount of classifications as we did this current cycle, and we just made it more simplified by just going A through 7A. And so at that rate, all the school districts have a date in October. They've got to have their FTE number signed off on for the Georgia Department of Education. And in that time frame, I think it's before October 1st, each district also has to turn in the number of out-of-district kids they have. And out-of-district kids are students that have moved into your district after 5th grade. Anybody that lives outside of the school zone, if they're there after 5th grade, if they're there before 5th grade, they don't count. If they're an active military child, they do not count. And if the parent is a teacher at the high school who's given the count, then they don't count against the student. If they're at a feeder school or district office or anything like that, they do count against that school's out of district number. So those kids, those out of district kids, will count twice because they're already in the original school count. So that makes them a 3 count. The multiplier is 3. And so then they add that number together. And then they take the number with the out of zone number, the FTE plus out of zone, and then they total it. And then that's where we get the reclass number. And they go highest to lowest. And then in 7A, we do 13%. And then in single A, we do 12%, because single A is they're really about the smallest 50 football playing schools. And you take out the non-football playing schools, and you put them back in there after you do that. And then every other class from 6A to 2A is 15%. So that's how you get your 100%. And obviously you're going to be, a couple points on that percentage up or lower, but they nailed it. I mean, I think we were 14.9 or 14.8 on 6A through 2A. I mean, I'm telling you, the whole way around, so far it looks like it's been done really well on the side of the state office.
And you can't ask it for anything more than that. I just wanted you to, somebody that knows, come on and explain how the numbers go. Because I always thought that what they did is they did the bottom first. And then once they got that lower number, then they went to the top and then sorted out the middle.
Right. Yeah.
Because of how single A is. I mean, there's so many single A schools that they're not football playing schools, and they're not, they might not have athletics, but they're in the GHSA because they do one act, or, they have other things. So I don't know why I thought that, but it just seemed like mathematically it would make more sense to start from the bottom and then go the other way. Because if your number's 4,000, okay, you're not going to have 400 football players.
Right.
You're going to have 120, 150. But if you're in single A and you have 250 kids and only 10% of the population is playing football, that's 23 kids. Well, if you're also in single A and the number's 500, well, you got 50. The difference between 50 kids on a Friday night and 23 kids on a Friday night is a huge disparity.
Correct.
So I just always thought that getting single A right first, because the big number doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I mean, like I said, your basketball team, you might have a 9th grade, a JV, and a varsity, but you're not going to have 40 kids on each one of those squads. You're just not. And I'm glad you came on and shared that part of it and that piece, because I've just always been curious as to what the thinking was on how we count it, and it makes sense now. Well,
Yeah, it is. And at the end of the day, it's really just guardrails you're putting in place for single A and for 7A. And when I say 7A, I really mean the top edge of 6A, because you don't want too many schools that are in the low 2000s having to play up against those schools in the 3000s or the 2800s. And so that's where the 13% comes in, is to have some guardrails in place for those schools.
right.
And then the approximate 50 in that smallest classification is what we're, football playing schools is what we've found to be around that number. And our good friend Eli Dupree down there is made sure we understand that approximate 50 and what that should look like. But he's always been an advocate for those single A schools. And, it's people like that we want to hear from. We need to hear. I mean, if we don't hear from you, then we don't know. We don't know what your concerns are. And he's been a really good advocate for those schools. And he's just about at every reclass meeting, and we appreciate him.
I remember going to my first GHSA Executive Council meeting, and it was in 2001. We talked about going to 5 classifications for the first time. And Coach Cruz, Jesse Cruz, got up and he argued the reason why we needed to not go to 5, or whatever his argument was. And at the time, mathematically, it was backwards. He was on the right track, but it was arguing the opposite. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like I'm over there going, no. You're so close. It's single A is the problem. If you hard cap a number at 500, you still got single A schools that only have 300 guys. That's a huge, or 300 kids. That's a huge disparity in how many children they can run out there to choose from to play. Where at the top end, you're not gonna. And anyway, it was very interesting to see how business was conducted and how it went. And I'm sure it has evolved greatly since then. But Coach Dupree, I've known him my entire coaching career. He's very good friends with my coaching mentor, Stacy Bell, and I've played many rounds of golf with Coach Dupree, and I'm so glad that he's fighting for the little guys. Because there was a talk in the mid 2010s about single A just dropping out and saying, you know what, this ain't for us. Y'all don't really care about us. We'll go figure it out. And that would be a shame for the whole thing to break up because we couldn't find common ground.
That's right. And I'll go back. You mentioned Jesse Cruz. Jesse's been. I remember my very first meeting ever. Golly, man, it was either late 2009 or 2010, and Jesse and my dad went way back, and he kind of took me in under his wing, and now he's transitioned up to Appling, and he's kind of helping them out a little bit, and he calls all the time. Just wants to be updated, and I've never seen anybody make a motion on something being passed or approved in a meeting like Jesse Cruz does. So there's been a couple people take that on and want to be that person now. But yeah, Jesse's been great.
Well, and it takes people like that to build the great organization that we've had for all these years. And as important as athletics are for the total education of the child, and as much as we like to beat our chest and say we're one of the best in the country, it's important that we take care of our member schools, and we have people like Coach Cruz that are still involved when he could have walked away years ago, and not, well done, my good and faithful servant. It's not like he didn't put a lot into it, and he's not the only one. But there's been countless number of individuals that have helped, and now you're one of those guys, and I'm so glad that you reached out and decided to come on and set the record straight, so to speak, for some of us, and hopefully your explanation has opened some eyes and some ears and some hearts to understand, what a monumental task a reclass is for our great state.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I remember when I was a young guy, and I want to still think I am that guy until I look in the mirror and see all these gray hairs on my head and my beard, and just realize, this is year 25 for me, which is wild. But I've enjoyed it. It's like I said again, I don't coach anymore, but this satisfies that coaching need for me. Because I do. I've talked to all all of the executive committee members. I'm not afraid to answer the phone and talk to any coach anywhere if they've got a question. And because I have people do that for me. And that's just something I want to keep passing on, as long as I'm doing this and try to help out as many people as I can.
Season 7 of Sun Coaches Podcast is proudly brought to you by Titan Sensor. Season 7.
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Game night's fun until someone spends 5 minutes lining up one shot. Chalk, breathe, re-chalk, still aiming. While they figure it out, I fire up Chumba Casino. I can spin anywhere, anytime, and there's always a new social casino game every week. Spins happen way faster than that shot. Play now at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.